We are extremely pleased that you are here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions, and I guess in a way they're related.
For sure.
My first one is overcoming addiction. In many ways, in something small or something big.
We don't want you to overcome addiction. Next. Well, we want you to be hooked on source. We want you to be hooked on your vortex. We want you to be addicted to feeling good. We want the momentum of connection to be so strong that, like our friend is talking about when she is counseling someone at her church, they can't take her down because she's so well connected. And so the word addiction often has a negative connotation, but instead of the word addiction, let's use the word momentum. And then let's talk about in which direction the momentum is pointed. And let's acknowledge that there are things that you want momentum about and maybe some things you don't want momentum about. But the addiction itself is not a bad thing. Momentum in the law of attraction is a good thing because you have the power of focusing it towards something that benefits you. Yes?
That's my second question.
Yes.
So I've been listening to you since I was 12 years old. And I'm not that old, I'm 19, so about 2012. And it's been up and down since then, but I have the feeling that more recently I have a lot of momentum going the other way. Do you have a nugget of wisdom to reverse it? I know you talked about the sticks and just leaving alone what you don't associate positivity with.
What we said earlier was really for you. This is good. This will help. Let's call any habit of thought or belief that doesn't serve me, let's call it an addiction. In other words, law of attraction has got me addicted to this because law of attraction says that which is likened to itself is drawn. So if I'm focusing in a way that doesn't feel good, it's likely that I'm going to keep doing that unless I find some way of stopping that resistance long enough. And the best analogy that we've ever found about that is imagine a cork bobbing on the surface of the water, and let's call that alignment with source. Now you can hold that cork under the water temporarily, and let's call that negative emotion or negative attraction. Let's even call it addiction to something unwanted. But when you let go of it, it's going to bob right back up because the natural state is alignment. The unnatural state doesn't feel good. That's why feeling good feels good and not feeling good doesn't feel good. It's because the natural state is feeling good. So you want to talk about the specifics of this addiction?
It's kind of on a small scale, but I see it around me in bigger scales.
Then let's talk about it in general at first. Everyone wants to feel good. Everything that everyone thinks they want is because they believe they will feel better when they get that. And so there are a lot of people who life is doing its work just the way they knew it would. Life and its contrast is stimulating people to wanting more. So people all over the place are launching rocket after rocket after rocket of desire, and they're building these vibrational realities, we call it the vortex, where their inner being is standing, that are calling them. So everyone you know is being called toward what they want, but they're standing in different places. Well, when you're being called towards something you want by an inner being who never lets go of awareness of what you want and never stops calling you, and you are standing in beliefs that aren't letting you go, it's miserable. And for some people, because they don't know how to let go of those beliefs, all they can figure out to do is to numb themselves, to do something that keeps them from focusing so strongly. So some drug or alcohol or something of that nature. Is that the subject that you want to talk about?
It's not that, but I'm sure it applies to a lot of people, and I'm sure the process is the same.
Doesn't matter what it is. They utilize some substance or some experience to cover their emotion of discord. Doesn't cause the discord to go away, it just keeps them from feeling it while they're doing that. So while there is a physiological effect of substances, we don't want to get too distracted. While there is a physiological effect of substances, the vibrational effect is by far the greater one. We know this for sure. Anything that a person feels they are addicted to, which usually by that they mean something that they think isn't good for them, that they keep feeling compelled to participate in. If they would go just 3 days without putting it into their body, their cellular addiction would stop completely in 3 days. No matter how drastic the drug or whatever it is 3 days is all that it takes for that to work itself through the physiology of a physical apparatus. 3 days. And the cellular calling would stop. But it's not the cellular calling, it's the vibrational calling. It's the thoughts that they have against themselves that they are trying to numb. It's the not enoughness, it's the not being loved, it's the not liking who I am. It's the departure from their own inner being that has got them suffering. And they're suffering thought by thought by thought by thought, because most people have given over to what other people think about them instead of paying attention to what their inner being thinks about them. So they're asking people whose job it isn't to notice them, to hold them as steady attention. And they're asking people who aren't tuned in, tapped in, turned on, to be the one that helps them into that place, which isn't possible either. So once you get hold of this, once you understand where your true resources are, and you find a way to touch them every now and again so that you consciously know what it feels like to touch them and to feel them and to experience the effect of them, then you get addicted to, so much so that even though you're going to leave the house at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're going to make sure that you get up and have that time of alignment, because you know the difference the day will be if you take the time to find your true alignment first. Yeah. Did we get there, or is there something more?
For that topic, yeah, that you answered my question. I do have one that's not that related from what I can tell. I have a family member, my father. He's not a very nice person. Well, I say he's really bitter and frustrated. There's a lot of pent-up negativity around him, and it's apparent from even, when he checks out at a cashier, anybody can see it. It's really, really apparent. But there is a lot of love both ways.
So what's happening there? If you saw someone on the street bleeding, if the cashier saw someone on the street bleeding, we know you would go help that person. But when you see someone being obnoxious and abrasive, you don't want to help them, even though they really are suffering in the same way that someone who's been run over by a car and is bleeding is. They're suffering from their disconnection from who they are. So when you see someone who chronically behaves that way, you know what it means? They have powerful desires that are calling them, and for whatever reason they can't get themselves to let go of the thoughts that pull them apart, and so they're just holding themselves in a chronic tug of war. Sometimes earlier in life things can distract you and you can have moments of pleasure. But the older people get, usually the more stuck in their patterns of thought they are. And then the more evidence they attract that supports their theories of injustice and unfairness and inequality and wrongdoing in the world, you see. We're going to tell you something that you already know, but we want to say it out loud here. There's no one who experiences greater love than your Father. He's just not letting it out where you all can see it. And what we mean by that is he has the potential for it, because through his troubled life, he has launched so many rockets of desire that he has big time desire. And it's all right there for him. If he could just find some way. You may be the key, but don't give yourself that responsibility. Give yourself the responsibility of seeing him that way, because it hurts you to see him otherwise. Give yourself the opportunity of seeing him that way. Don't try to guide him. Don't try to explain it to him. Just know who he is. And as you come to know it unequivocally, you can have a step 5 moment. You can be standing in line with him at the cashier, and you can watch him with his chip on his shoulder, interrogating or doing whatever he does that offers his display of dissatisfaction. And you can have practiced knowing who he is so well that instead of a step 1 moment, which is embarrassment or sadness, you can be having a step 5 moment, which is, yeah, that's just who you are, Dad, and I know why. I know who you really are and what you really want. And everybody on the planet would be ornery like you're being right now too under the circumstances. But I get why. I get why. And then when you're not embarrassed, when instead you're loving him, when you're not upset with him, but instead you're understanding, that understanding goes so far. Because you know what you are? You are like the satellite dish that has beamed the signal in closer to him. And something that he's been reaching for and reaching for that he can't find suddenly is right there standing in line with him, feeling it. And what you're going to start noticing is he's going to start softening a little bit. And when he turns and looks at you and you're smiling, not grimacing, you're winking at him, not hiding, you're giving him a thumbs up, not running away from him. You're with him. You're with him in your love for him. You're with him in your love for him. Because that's all he's reaching for. He would just like some evidence in this world that this is not a crap place to be. He would like some evidence in this world that there is truth and that there is justice and there is rightness and that there is a pattern and that there is a way to live happily ever after. He just wants to see it demonstrated somewhere, something that he once believed that the larger part of him will never let go of.
Okay.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be nice if he had some of those moments before he croaks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly what you said. You know, at the cashier, that's the example that I brought up because that's the time that I feel the most embarrassed. When we leave, I backtrack and I apologize.
This is a really good thing because this is you in your embarrassment carrying more what those people feel than what your inner being feels. And your inner being isn't embarrassed. Your inner being understands. Your inner being knows what he wants, and your inner being knows what he currently believes. And your inner being is never giving up on him. Your inner being is not embarrassed. Your inner being knows who he is and why he feels the way he does, and keeps standing there just waiting for him to come on home to it, to come on home to it. But you are doing what anybody else would do. Almost anybody else will do it. Everybody's got stories of how their parents embarrass them. But as you stand there not embarrassed because you're standing with your inner being who's standing with his inner being, and instead of being embarrassed, you're not on his side of belligerence either, but you're on his side of fairness and justice and truthfulness. You're on his side of respect and things getting better. You're on his side of fairness across the board. You're on his side about equal opportunity. You're on his side about love being across the board. You're on his side about prosperity. You're on his side about all the things that he wants. You're on his side. And as you stand there on the side of your inner being so that your energy's not split, whoa, what a difference that will make in your relationship, not just with your father. Your father is giving you this opportunity to discover your relationship with your inner being.